And Gessler Propane is your local supplier that makes sure you get your hard-earned money's worth. Why go to gas exchanges to pay higher prices for tanks not filled to capacity? Gessler Propane makes sure you're prepared for year-round grilling with 100% filled tanks at a reasonable cost. See Bob Monday through Friday, 10 to 4, and Saturday, 9 to 3 at Gessler Propane, 702 Youngstown Poland Road, Struthers, or call 330-755-9119. Gessler Propane. They got gas.
Welcome to Calvin's Barbershop.
You all got to see this.
I don't even want to know what you're looking at on that phone.
Well, you should. I was learning about the dangers of high blood pressure and that we need to get ours checked regularly. High blood pressure can increase the risk of heart attack or stroke, but this text program can help keep it at a healthy range. Just text Barbershop to 97779 to sign up.
I'll get right on it as soon as I'm done with this baby panda video.
Text Barbershop to 97779. A message from the American Heart Association and the Ad Council.
The Mahoning Valley's leader for golf, Milk Creek Golf Course, is now booking tee times for 2024. We offer stay and play opportunities available with 9 area hotel partners. For more information, visit our website at millcreekmetroparks.org. Also, look for new, exciting opportunities coming soon, including an indoor player development center with Trackman, an indoor Callaway Club Fitting Center, and an Odyssey Fitting Studio in 2024. Follow us on Facebook at Milk Creek Golf Course or call 330-740-7112.
Hey, let me ask you something. Would you seat your 3-year-old child on a windowsill? Would you seat them beside a lit fireplace or by the deep end of a pool? One last question. Would you seat your child in a car seat that's not correct for them? Car crashes are a leading killer of children ages 1 to 13. Secure their future. Seat them in the correct car seat. For more information, visit safercar.gov/the-right-seat. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
It's time to kick back and listen to the sports page with your host, Pat Lucia, right here on Western Reserve Radio. You can call the show at 330-707-4202 and tell everyone what's on your mind in the wonderful world of sports. Now, here's your host, Pat Lucia.
Saturday morning sports page, Pat Lucia. Yes, it is a beautiful, cloudy day here in Youngstown, Ohio, and it is the Saturday morning sports page, 330-707-4202. Irish Mike will be calling in and joining me soon. So we got a lot to get to today in the wonderful world of sports. Yes, we were off last week. We took a week off, and we are back. Dave Clark is out on the DL, and he will be back soon. Anyway, we got a lot, again, to get to. Kenny Pickett is now a Philadelphia Eagle, traded by the Pittsburgh Steelers. The components of that trade kind of go like they had draft picks involved. This is how it breaks down. The Eagles traded Kenny Pickett and a 4th-round pick, which happens to be the 120th pick in the draft, to the Philadelphia Eagles. Pittsburgh will receive a 3rd-round pick, which is the 98th pick, and the Eagles' highest 2 7th-round picks in the deal. So, i.e., it just sounds like, I'm not saying they gave him away, but you're getting a 4th-round pick. You trade a 4th round, so you get a 3rd round and 2 7-round picks. Kenny Pickett now is an Eagle, and Russell Wilson now has the starting position, or will be the starting quarterback. Memo to everybody out there. A lot of discussion about Pickett was not happy with the way Pittsburgh went out and went after Russell Wilson. Evidently, there were some feelings hurt, and Kenny wanted out of Pittsburgh. Well, memo to everybody out there, Kenny Pickett was pretty much gone after during the season. He was healthy, ready to play, and the Steelers opted to stay with Mason Rudolph as their quarterback. And what Mason Rudolph is obviously now no longer a Pittsburgh Steeler. He is a Tennessee Titan. He signed a 1-year deal with the Titans, so he's obviously not coming back to Pittsburgh either, and neither is Kenny Pickett. They traded him. So it'll be Russell Wilson, and I'm assuming that Pittsburgh will have to go out and find themselves another quarterback. Does this open up a door to a potential trade for Justin Fields for the Bears? Obviously, now we'll get to that. The market for Justin Fields has pretty much fallen through the proverbial roof, or dropped through the, however you want to call this, but the market for Justin Fields is probably non-existent. And now Chicago is trying to figure out where they're going to trade him. A lot of discussion, we'll get to that, is what will the Chicago Bears do? Rumor is, or one of the options they talked about, is potentially even keeping him and waiting maybe through training camp for a potential landing spot if a team has a quarterback who suffers a bad injury. They will be in a market for a starting quarterback. Possibly Justin Fields' market value will go up, but right now his market value, we'll just say it's not so good. So does Chicago keep him and ride with him? Maybe they keep him on the roster during the year. Maybe they have Caleb Williams, who now it seems to be a foregone conclusion that the Chicago Bears are going to draft Caleb Williams. We'll have to wait and see, but that seems to be a foregone conclusion. So the Bears will have Caleb Williams. Do they keep Justin Fields? Do they keep him the year? If they decide they're not going to give him away and wait for a better trade situation to come their way. And again, if a team loses a starting quarterback, maybe they can get a second or first round draft choice for Justin Fields. Maybe they wait for draft day and see what happens with with all these quarterbacks now coming out from college. There's rumor or discussion that there could be 6 quarterbacks taken in the first round in this draft. A lot of discussion about teams potentially wanting to move up. It seems like J.J. McCarthy's name now is being bantered around by a lot of different teams as far as, does he get potentially drafted? Could he be a top 5 pick? Rumor has it that maybe the New York Giants are interested in J.J. McCarthy. And can they basically, I believe they sit at number 6. Can they sit there and wait till he drops to number 6? So there'll be a lot of interesting situations with these quarterbacks coming out of college as far as where are they going to go. Does this open up doors, though, for teams to move up? Minnesota now, again, they lost Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins now is an Atlanta Falcon, big contract signed, coming off an Achilles tear. So he will be obviously question mark maybe as he proceeds through the spring training. And we'll see what happens with Kirk Cousins as far as with Atlanta Falcons. But he's got a sweet deal. I believe he's 36 years old. So does Cousins basically, as he plays with Atlanta this year, he's got a loaded team, good roster around him. Does that make the Atlanta Falcons the potential favorite to win that South Division? Baker Mayfield signed his deal with Tampa Bay. We'll see how that goes as far as he had, I believe, a 3-year deal. So you've got the New Orleans Saints, very competitive division there. Carolina will probably be in last place again this year. But those 3 teams, New Orleans, Tampa Bay, and Atlanta, will obviously be vying for the division title. If you look at the rosters, now that they have Kirk Cousins, you might say Atlanta may be favored to win that South Division in the NFC, because the roster probably has, Atlanta's got the best roster of the 4 teams in that division. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays itself out. But Kirk Cousins now is an Atlanta Falcon, left Minnesota. What does that mean? That leaves Minnesota out there as far as in the quarterback market. They did sign Sam Darnold to a 1-year deal. Are they comfortable going in to the year with Sam Darnold as pretty much their number one starter, or are they looking to maybe move up in the draft and grab one of these quarterbacks coming out of college? Michael Penix, who's got a questionable situation with his health, with his knees. However, does he drop down in the first round? And does a team like Minnesota look at maybe drafting Michael Penix? It seems like J.J. McCarthy's stock is moving up in the draft. You have Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, and Drake May out of North Carolina. You've got a lot of those quarterbacks potentially could be in the top 10. Penix could end up being in the top 10. It just depends on what these teams decide to do. But the quarterback demand, as always, is always probably the number one demand in as far as the NFL's quarterbacks are always in high demand. And I could see 6, potentially 7 quarterbacks going in the first round, but I could see definitely 6 quarterbacks going in the first round this year. When you break down though the NFL, and as far as where your quarterbacks are going to go, you have teams that are basically, you have Washington who cut their quarterback Howell. So Washington is obviously going to be in need for a quarterback. You've got Chicago now; they're going to take Caleb Williams. Washington and New England will obviously need a quarterback. So you see quarterbacks, the New York Giants, because they only have one more year technically on that deal with Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones has signed a 4-year deal, but the Giants could pretty much get out of it after 2 years. So after this year is up, the Giants could pretty much part ways with Daniel Jones and pretty much not have any. I believe their cap hit would be relatively minor. So at the end of the day, the Giants could definitely cut Daniel Jones loose and in essence look to get a quarterback. What does that mean? The Giants, again, sitting at number 6. Giants could have Daniel Jones one more year, draft the rookie quarterback, let him sit behind Daniel Jones for the year, and then ultimately look at that quarterback as being the starter for the following year. Technically, the Chicago Bears could draft Caleb Williams, keep Justin Fields. Highly unlikely, but they could potentially do that. And they could, in essence, let Justin Fields be the starter, let Caleb Williams sit a year behind Justin Fields, and then ultimately trade Justin Fields at the end of the season and have Caleb as your starter. The only deal that they're going to have to decide is, does the Chicago Bears pick up the 5th year in Justin Fields' contract, which I believe would pay him somewhere in the neighborhood of $18 million. He's only getting $1.5 or $6 million this year as quarterback for the Bears, but if they pick up that 5th year, that's where the option year, that's where it would go up. So we'll have to wait and see what Chicago does with Caleb Williams and Justin Fields. Again, the market for Justin Fields has pretty much fallen through the proverbial roof or the floor, depending on how you want to look at it, but it has definitely dropped. And now all these other teams have quarterbacks, and it seems like one case scenario out there now that Pittsburgh is looking for a backup. Do the Pittsburgh Steelers decide to make the deal, and maybe with a 3rd or 4th round pick, they go ahead and they pick up Justin Fields from the Chicago Bears and let him sit behind Russell Wilson for a year? So we're going to have to wait and see how that plays itself out. Let's go ahead and hit the phones. Irish Mike, what's up?
Good morning, Pat. How are you doing, buddy?
Good.
What do we got going on for this morning?
Today, just talking a little NFL football to start the show, talking Kenny Pickett obviously being traded to the Eagles. We could see that coming after I know what they're trying to say, that Kenny Pickett was not pleased with Russell Wilson signing with Pittsburgh, but we all know the reality of the situation is when the Pittsburgh Steelers made the decision to stay with Mason Rudolph after Kenny Pickett was healthy to play, I think you pretty much knew that Kenny Pickett's days were numbered in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he was a first-round draft pick in April 2022, and he started, 12, 13 games last year. And, you and I have talked about this for years. How many starts do you give a guy before you fairly and objectively evaluate him? And I always say between 25 and 30 gives you a good gauge of where you're at. One of my closest friends has been a Steelers fan for almost 50 years. And, I mentioned about going after, maybe 2 weeks ago, about going after Justin Fields. And he said, well, if they go after Justin Fields, then that's the end of Kenny Pickett's career in Pittsburgh, simply because they're relatively the same age, as far as experience in the NFL, where Russell Wilson's 34, and maybe he'll be willing to sit behind him for a year and learn the game, and all the, guys won a Super Bowl, he's been experienced, etc. So he believed that the Russell Wilson signing was much safer for Kenny Pickett than bringing in Justin Fields. And so when that happened yesterday, he said he was semi-surprised by it, that he would react that way to say what he wanted out of Pittsburgh. So I thought that was, but now I think this opens up the box for the Steelers now to pursue Justin Fields.
Yeah, that's what I think a lot of Pittsburgh fans are thinking in the back of their mind is Russell Wilson will be the 1 year quarterback. They got him for a deal, veteran minimum of $1.2 million.
I mean, they're not paying him anything.
No, that's a drop in the bucket in the NFL. So bottom line is you have to figure that if they can get the market now for Justin Fields is pretty much dropped, because all these other teams have, pretty much filled their rosters with what free agent quarterbacks out there were available. They filled their roster. So now you have to decide, if you're Chicago, what do you do with Justin Fields? Rumor, one option was keep him through training camp to see potentially if a team loses a quarterback to an injury, then they could probably get a first-round pick for him, because a team will be desperate to potentially trade to get Justin Fields. But if that doesn't happen, you still have him on the roster. Could potentially keep him on the roster with Caleb Williams and let them compete for the position? I think that's highly unlikely, but I guess you can't ever rule that out either.
No. I mean, it becomes a interesting situation. Obviously, Arthur Smith is the new offensive coordinator. And so automatically you start thinking Ryan Tannehill, because they had a relationship in Tennessee when Tannehill was the quarterback and Smith was the offensive coordinator before he became the Falcons head coach. So obviously that's the first name that comes to mind, is Ryan Tannehill to be the backup. Obviously a veteran like Russell, maybe a couple years younger than Wilson, but not much. But to the Justin Fields situation, I originally thought with Kenny Pickett and Justin Fields, it could have been like a Troy Aikman, Steve Walsh type of thing. You kind of figure out who does what and trade the other guy away. Not that they had the same market value that Steve Walsh did, because I think Jimmy Johnson traded New Orleans for a first-round pick and a third-round pick. So, I mean, obviously, when I think of that situation, Troy Aikman and Steve Walsh, I kind of think of Caleb Williams and Justin Fields. I think it's apparent to everybody now the Bears are going to take Caleb Williams. Would we agree on that?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much a foregone conclusion.
Yes.
I mean, I think that if you were, I believe if you look,
and they're calling him allegedly, I'm just saying, he could be the next Patrick Mahomes. He could be, if he's the next Patrick Mahomes or close to, you got to take him. You have no choice.
Well, that's the whole discussion with that. The ultimate problem you have is if you don't draft him and he goes to another team, and sure enough, he plays, on the line of a Patrick Mahomes or somewhere close to that, then you're out of a job, because you can't pass on him. And if he ends up playing like, the next Patrick Mahomes, you're pretty much, out of a job. Now, if you draft him and he doesn't quite develop the way it is, you're not necessarily going to lose your job because you're in essence, common sense was telling you got to pick him. He's the number one guy. It was interesting you brought that up is because Deion Sanders was on Mad Dog Russo yesterday, and he was talking to Mad Dog, and he said his concern with Caleb Williams, he says, I think he's a, good quarter, could be very potentially a great quarterback, but he says, just remember, he's coming to Chicago playing in that cold, damp weather. A kid played in California. Now I know he's from Washington, D.C., but it's a little different when you're playing up in Chicago, especially if you're playing in a November, December time frame. You know what that city can be like in November and December. So can a young guy like that adjust to that real cold weather? He goes, that would be a concern for me. He says it's one thing when Justin Fields from Ohio went up there to play because Ohio, granted, our weather isn't quite as severe as Chicago, but it's in it's not a giant adjustment. But if you're a warm weather player and you like playing in California, you go to Chicago, that's like night and day.
Yeah.
And he could struggle with that. So again, there's a lot of, factors. And I know between now and I believe April 25th, the day of the draft, when hopefully all these questions will be answered as far as where these players are ultimately going to go. But I think going back to what you initially said, I think that at the end of the day, we can pretty much take it to the bank, sort of to speak, that Caleb Williams is going to be a Chicago Bear. I don't see them trading the pick. It could happen. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think it goes back to what you initially said. You're the GM. Caleb Williams has all the potential press clippings of another Patrick Mahomes, potentially. And I don't think you have any choice, but you have to trade. You have to draft him number one and go with him.
Yeah, I think that, obviously, because Cliff Kingsbury now is the offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders, and he worked with him last year at USC, Caleb Williams, being an offense analyst for Lincoln Riley, like he was last season. People automatically thought, well, maybe the Commanders will trade up one spot. But they seem to be okay with sitting at number 2 and taking a kid from LSU, right?
That seems to be the way. And when you break it down, if you look at the big board draft, I've got it in front of me. They actually have Caleb number 1, Drake May 2, Jaden Daniels 3. But I've heard, to your point, I think that Washington will probably take Jaden Daniels.
Agreed.
I think the problem you have with
Drake May scares me.
Exactly.
I think he scares a lot of people. It's probably not fair to the comparison because they went to the same school, but Mitch Trubisky came out of North Carolina 7 or 8 years ago.
Right.
And so, rightly or wrongly, fairly or unfairly, I think Drake May gets that comparison sometimes.
Well, and also the other thing you have to look at, too, is I'll go one better, and adding to that, Daniel Jones went to Duke.
Yeah.
And the ACC. And now, granted, teams might be a little hesitant of drafting quarterbacks out of the ACC. Now, Lawrence had a bad year for Jacksonville. He went to Clemson. But Lawrence didn't have a very good year either. So now people are questioning, they think he will come back. They believe he was playing with an injury. The team fell apart. But people are wondering whether or not has Lawrence hit his ceiling, and he seemed to struggle a lot later part of the season. So, but again, playing with an injury, where does that compute into that discussion as far as, was that the reason why Lawrence looked, he didn't look very good the last, 6-7 games where Jacksonville totally fell off the planet and didn't get into the playoffs after everybody pretty much had them winning that division going away, and they pretty much fell apart.
Correct.
Correct.
And the only thing worse than not having a franchise quarterback is thinking you do and you really don't.
Right.
That's the only thing worse.
And that's a good point. That's really an excellent point. That's the worst part, is when you think you have one, and the reality is, no, you don't.
Yes.
And
you keep, to me, the name that always comes to mind is Andy Dalton in Cincinnati. And he was there, 8 or 9 years, and he did okay, but you never looked at him. One of the discussions I heard on talk show is that, they mentioned Justin Fields, and they said if you gave him a grade as an NFL quarterback, you'd probably give him a B minus, somewhere in that neighborhood. B, he's not an A minus or an A. I think after 3 years, because you look at it and say, he's quarterbacked, 40, 45 starts, and usually after 25 or 30, you have a real good idea. And the fact that he started for almost 3 years and he plays 17 games a year now, he's had, I think, 43, 44 starts under his belt. So you had a real good idea. And if you still say you're not sure about him, then then he's not. This is what guys say. Most analysts say that. If you're still not sure, then you already have your answer.
Yeah, no, that's the bottom line. Is if you're not sure, you think your answer is he's not. It's that the old say, if you can't say it, if he's the guy, I know it. If you have to think about it, you've answered the question. And the question is, he's not the guy. Correct. And Dalton was a good quarterback, and I would say him, average to good, somewhere between that time frame. But again, that's probably a tough. Well, is the guy good or average? Well, it doesn't matter. He's not. One thing, he's not the guy. If he's good or average, you could go get a good. You could go replace him. If you're a good or average quarterback, you're replaceable in the NFL.
Yes.
Now that's the fact of life.
And I think I saw yesterday that Minnesota traded back up in the first round. Now they got two first round draft picks now.
Yes.
The Vikings. And the number 23 pick, I believe, is the Texans own that pick from the Browns, and they trade for Deshaun Watson, if I'm not mistaken. So they parlayed that pick in the multiple picks, did they not?
Yeah. They got the 23rd. The way that trade worked out, and that's fueling speculation that Minnesota's going to potentially package those 2 first rounders to move up to maybe the top 2 or top 3 spot, because it said the trade was Minnesota and Houston have agreed to trade they call it the Nets. That nets Minnesota an additional first round pick in 2024. They worked out the deal. It said in the deal, the Vikings get the 23rd pick overall in the first round, which happens to be the Texans, and the 7th round pick. Texans will get a 2nd round pick, which is a 42nd overall, and a 6th round pick, which is the 188th pick, and a 2nd round pick next year. So Minnesota's just been able to negotiate a deal that in essence is going to go ahead and get them the Houston Texans first round pick for this year. Then the word is Minnesota will then turn around, rumor has it, or speculation is Minnesota has the 11th pick. So now they have the 23rd pick, so now they've got the 2. Yes, and you're right, Irish Mike. That was actually Cleveland's pick.
Yes.
That's a Deshaun Watson.
The Browns gave this coming draft next month. The Browns gave the Texans a first round pick, which is the 23rd pick in the trade you mentioned,
yes,
and a 4th round pick to the Texans in that Deshaun Watson trade.
That's the Deshaun Watson pick.
The one thing no one's been able to explain that I've asked with me for a year and a half now, guys that kind of follow pro football really closely, and I don't understand this. Okay. But, over the years, I'll just use the Kansas City Chiefs. They traded Tyreek Hill a couple years ago to the Dolphins. And so it's salary cap related. And you see teams trading players that they really like and want to keep because of salary cap purposes. Or Pat, they end up cutting them from the roster because of, salary cap purposes. But it seems like to me, since the Browns made this Deshaun Watson trade, they're able to maneuver around all this stuff. Like, I just saw Jerry Jeudy sign a new contract yesterday.
Yep. Hey, hold on, Irish Mike.
Yeah.
That's our break. We'll come right back after this quick timeout. First quarter's in the book. Pat Lucia, Irish Mike is joining me this morning. We'll be back after a quick timeout on the Saturday Morning Sports Page.
Western Reserve Radio is the Valley's online source for sports talk and local live events. Tune in and be a part of their live weekly shows, as well as all of the hard-hitting action of Youngstown Phantoms hockey, high school football, and the GDFL. Find them at westernreserveradio.com. Tune in and the Live 365 app to be a part of the area's sports conversation. Be sure to visit them on Facebook at Western Reserve Radio and on Twitter at WR_radio.
WWE superstar Alberto Del Rio, take one.
Behold the angry giant.
Try it again, Alberto.
Behold the angry giant.
Perfect. Good luck tonight.
Behold the angry giant.
Yay! Read me another one, Dad.
This is WWE superstar Alberto Del Rio. It only takes a moment to make a moment. Take time to be a dad today.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Hey, let me ask you something. Would you seat your 3-year-old child on a windowsill? Would you seat them beside a lit fireplace or by the deep end of a pool? One last question. Would you seat your child in a car seat that's not correct for them? Car crashes are a leading killer of children ages 1 to 13. Secure their future. Seat them in the correct car seat. For more information, visit safercar.gov/the-right-seat. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Let's be real. The odds of a high school athlete getting a college scholarship and making it to the pros are pretty slim. Don't get me wrong. It's okay to dream of becoming a pro athlete, even a famous one. But that's not why I play. My reason why? I love the competition.
My reason why is community.
My reason why is leadership.
My reason why is to challenge myself.
My reason why is love for the game.
And hey, if we don't make it to the pros or onto the cover of Sports Illustrated, that's okay. Because there's every reason to believe we'll excel in something even bigger than sports. We'll excel in life.
There are lots of great reasons to play high school sports. Tell us your reason using the hashtag #MyReasonWhy.
This message presented by the NFHS and the Ohio High School Athletic Association.
Saturday Morning Sports Page, coming right back at you. Let's get Irish Mike back. Hey, Irish Mike. Back on the line. Irish Mike talking obviously about what will the...
yeah, I'm here, Pat. Sorry.
You got there? Yeah, you're good. Talking about the draft, the quarterback situation in the NFL. It's going to be interesting. Justin Fields now seems to be not in the picture right now. Market value dropped. All the teams have filled their roster with quarterbacks that they look like they're going to have. Darnold signed a 1-year deal with the Vikings. Now the Vikings have got the Texan pick, the 23rd pick, which actually was the Browns pick. So the Texans still have a first-round pick. They have their own, but the one they traded to Minnesota was the 23rd pick, and that was supposed to be the Cleveland Brown pick. That's the Deshaun Watson, one of the Deshaun Watson picks. So, when you look at his market value, now all of a sudden the market has cooled on Justin Fields. Big question moving forward, did the Chicago trade him, potentially do they trade him even before the draft, or they wait till after the draft to trade him, or they even actually keep him through training camp, and then ultimately then wait for the team who has a quarterback going down with a terrible injury, and now the market value goes right back up. I believe that's what happened with Sam Bradford years ago with the Eagles. I've got to look that one up, but that was where they had a quarterback blow out a knee, and ultimately Sam Bradford, they either traded him, I'll look it up, but ultimately Sam Bradford became in demand because of an injury. So we'll wait and see what happens with the see what with the Chicago Bears and and Justin Fields. Philadelphia obviously has Kenny Pickett now, will be the backup to Jalen Hurts, and Pittsburgh Steelers are now in the market for a backup. And does that open up the door to a potential Justin Fields trade with Chicago if they can get Justin Fields for a 3rd round pick and a 4th round pick, or some kind of deal where they swap out picks? Does Chicago go ahead and go that direction, or is Chicago going to wait and see if they can get more for him?
I would think, Pat, obviously you still go down your mental checklist and say, what organizations do you believe still need starting quarterbacks? Obviously a lot of movement the last 2 weeks, and I think the Bears are sitting on something they probably didn't expect to be sitting on a month ago. They thought they probably could make a move by now and maybe wait through the draft or something. But, there's always those creative teams that know how to use players. And the team I think off the bat is the San Francisco 49ers, for Justin Fields. Obviously they got Brock Purdy, who they like. I think Brock Purdy's a little overrated. That's just me. But obviously that's their starter, and he fits well in the Shanahan system, and that's the direction they want to go in. Because you remember a year ago they had Sam Darnold there as a backup, and they had Trey Lance, who they traded to the Cowboys for a 4th round draft pick. Remember that? Oh, look at the quarterback depth the 49ers have with those 3 guys. Well, 2 of them are now gone 8 months later.
Yeah, no, good.
So
point.
Maybe you bring him in and say, Purdy gets hurt. We could use him, 5 to 10 snaps a game because he's a good running quarterback. We can do some zone read stuff with McCaffrey and just stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? A team that doesn't need a quarterback, but very creative in their offense of how to use their players.
Good point. I mean, right now, Darnold is gone, not at San Francisco. San Francisco would be in the market for a backup. Jimmy Garoppolo signed with the Rams as a backup to Stafford. And if I was the Rams, you better have a 3rd string quarterback ready to go. Because, Stafford can get hurt. Garoppolo could get hurt coming off the bench to get into the game. So I don't mean to be facetious, but I'm just saying that Garoppolo's injury history, he's a backup, but you better have a 3rd quarterback on your roster. The Rams need a 3rd string quarterback because Stafford being older, I believe what Stafford now is 36, 37. I'll look it up. But Garoppolo is just so injury prone. Good quarterback when he can play. But the problem with Garoppolo that drives you crazy is he seems to be always hurt. Yeah, Stafford is 36 years old. And, Garoppolo's always hurt. So if you're the Rams, you probably need to get a 3rd string quarterback. But getting back to what you said with the San Francisco 49ers, do they look at potentially going after Justin Fields, knowing that, Purdy's good, but they would like to have the solid backup in the, on their roster, and right now they don't have one? Or do the Steelers, knowing that maybe Russell Wilson is probably only going to be there 1 year, do they go out and they trade for Justin Fields, especially, again, if the market value is dropping down and now you're talking not a 1st round pick, but a 3rd or 4th round pick? Does that become more an attractive move for like a Steelers or, to your point, the 49ers to make a move and bring Justin Fields? As granted, I don't think Fields wants to be a backup. I wouldn't either. But that's what the market seems to have evolved right now. Or, again, I've said it before, I've said it. Do the Chicago Bears decide to wait it out and keep him on the roster and hope that, again, the disaster strikes, a team needs a starting quarterback who goes down with an ACL injury or a torn Achilles in practice, and they're in desperate need for a starting quarterback. They call the Bears up and say, yeah, we'll give you a first-round pick and a second-round pick because we really need Justin Fields because we have no starter. And especially if it's a team that's a very good team and, they know there's a big drop off between their starter and their backup, do they go ahead and take a chance on Fields? A good friend of mine just sent me a text. He goes, you're talking about, you brought up a good point about our, Mitch Trubisky, another ACC bust in ACC North Carolina bust. Does that make Drake May? People might be a little leery of Drake May. However, we had this discussion last year with Stroud. He was coming from Ohio State. And Ohio State has not had very good success with their quarterbacks coming into the NFL.
And Stroud is the first one.
And Stroud is really the first.
Start somewhere.
He is the first quarterback in Ohio State, in the history of Ohio State quarterbacks. Stroud is the first quarterback coming out of Ohio State to win the Rookie of the Year. No quarterback coming out Ohio State ever won Rookie of the Year and led their team into the playoffs.
You looked at them and said, wow, they could really do this.
Right. And that was the wrap on Stroud, is they were saying, right, but he played for Ohio State. Look at the history of Ohio State quarterbacks. And when you do, it's true.
I got into a disagreement the other day with a guy, Pat. We were talking about he's a big Browns fan, still loves Baker Mayfield, still believes the Browns were wrong for making the Deshaun Watson trade 2 years ago. And went on, he said, look at the contract Baker just signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last week. And I said, yes, it's 3 years for $100 million, but only $50 million of it's guaranteed. That's where you don't get with these contracts. So you have to meet certain incentives, make the playoffs, et cetera, to get you the full amount of money. I go, so it's not a 3-year, $100 million contract. It's a 3-year, $50 million contract. I said, Deshaun Watson signed a 5-year, $230 million guaranteed contract. So on the average, Deshaun Watson's making $46 million a year. And on average, Baker Mayfield's making $17 million a year. And I said, those are facts right there. So the Browns organization valued Deshaun Watson more than they valued Baker Mayfield, right? And at the end of the day, and I favored the trade at the time, and I still favor the trade. But at the end of the day, both Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski can lose their job over Deshaun Watson, because I don't care. You haven't won a division in 35 years. You haven't come close to getting the Super Bowl in probably 38 years. The reality is this, that if this Deshaun Watson thing doesn't work out, people are going to lose their jobs over this. No matter how many games you win, in the regular season, you say you screwed up the biggest trade maybe in NFL history, and somebody's got to be accountable for it.
Okay, you bring up an excellent point. Let's compare contracts. Let's take Baker's contract and Watson's contract. If you are a GM today, Deshaun Watson's contract basically does two things. It makes him totally untradeable, and they can't cut him. The reason why, in 2024, they take a dead cap hit of $200 million. We're just reading and hearing about the $85 million dead cap hit that Denver took with Russell Wilson, and people are obviously saying that could be the worst trade in NFL history, when Seattle traded Russell Wilson to Denver. And to make the matter worse, Denver gave him a big fat 5-year extension, and they got rid of him before the contract kicked in, and they got to take a dead cap hit of $85 million. Deshaun Watson's dead cap hit this year would be $200 million. Next year, the dead cap hit is $136 million. The third year, which is 2026, the dead cap hit is $72 million. Translation is Deshaun Watson is your quarterback for 3 years. You have no option. Cleveland has absolutely no option. The contract they signed with Deshaun Watson basically not only is paying him crazy money, but you're stuck with him. You can't cut him loose or you can't take a $200 million. Let me kind of give you an idea, like Baker Mayfield. Okay, if for some reason, and it's not going to happen this year, if Tampa Bay says before they want to get rid of him this year, they take a $40 million cap hit, and they're not going to do that. They just signed it. Okay, next year, if they decide he has a terrible year, they want to get rid of him, their dead cap is $29 million. That's not too bad when you're comparing it, especially if you compare it to either Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson. The third year of this contract, if they decide to cut ways with Baker Mayfield, their cap hit is only $9 million.
Yeah.
The contract that Baker signed with Tampa Bay is very team friendly. I mean, Baker's going to make a lot of money, no question. No one's going to. He's getting $50 million guaranteed contract.
Yeah,
going to get it, and I'm good. And Baker's a good enough quarterback to sign that contract. He wanted to stay in Tampa Bay.
That's why I want to see all these free agents sign, Pat. Whether you're a quarterback or a defensive tackle or a linebacker, or whatever, wide receiver. I look for the guaranteed money. I don't look for the contract because there's incentives you have to live up to that you might not ever get that money.
Right, exactly. And in the NFL, usually these contracts are 2-year contracts. Most not all, but a majority of the contracts in the NFL are either 1 or 2 year deals, where after 2 years, teams can get out of them and not take a bad cap hit, because that's just the way the NFL rolls. However, Haslam blew that out of the water when he signed Deshaun Watson to that contract, because not only is that contract all guaranteed, but the cap hit you take is just unheard of. You could not put your field, you couldn't release Deshaun Watson. You would have a hard time fielding a team taking $120 million dead cap hit.
And obviously, the Browns signed Jameson Winston this past week from New Orleans from the last 4 years to be the backup quarterback in 2024. And literally within 24 hours, Joe Flacco signed with the Indianapolis Colts for, I think, $8.5 million or $8.7 million, which is a big number for a backup quarterback.
Right, it is.
For a 1 year deal. But let's face it, 95% of Browns fans will tell you, I think 95% of Browns fans wanted Joe Flacco back for another year based on the fact he was a comeback player of the year and played well, minus, the pick sixes, which, were not good against the Texans in the playoff games, obviously. And I think the Browns front office and the coaching staff probably would have loved to have him back, but they knew they couldn't have him back because the first time Deshaun threw an interception or threw an incomplete pass, you didn't want the Browns fans Flacco. The biggest issue they have with him now, obviously there's been health issues with the shoulder and the surgeries. I get all that. Is psychologically, they're very worried about Deshaun Watson. They're worried about him. That's a fact. That's not an opinion.
Oh, no. Anytime.
Can he handle, all this stuff? Obviously he got the big contract that everyone's well aware of. He's making $46 million. I think he deferred some money. I think this year he's going to make $64 million. So people keep bringing up the contract and the fact that since 2020, he's only played in 11 or 12 games since 2020, right?
Right.
He sat out 2021. He played 6 games in 2022. And then last year he played, 7 or 8 games? So he's only played in 12 or 13 games in the last 3 years. That's not even a full season.
And I think that's probably what drives people absolutely crazy here is the fact that you have a quarterback that just has not played. And you're paying him an insane amount of money, and he's not on the field. And it's like and a lot of people are starting to say the same thing about Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's a very good quarterback. I don't have any doubt. But he's been hurt. And he's got it. Now people are bringing up, they signed him to the big deal, but he's not on the field. He's hurt. And I don't care who you are, your team, great quarterback. But when they're not on the field, they're hurting the team.
And this happened Wednesday or Thursday, Pat. Look what the Baltimore Ravens organization did with left tackle Ronnie Stanley and his contract. We all recognize Ronnie Stanley is a very good left tackle.
Yes.
He got drafted high in the first round out of Notre Dame 7 years ago, but he's had a hard time staying on the field the last 2 or 3 years. And look what they did with his contract, how much money he lost. Basically, he's got a lot of built-in incentives that you have to be starting and playing to get your money.
Yeah, and that's
what they did.
Right.
And I think they saved like $8.5 million towards the salary cap, restructuring his contract. And it's based upon playing incentives, being on the field.
Yeah, and the problem is once you start to get, if you have an injury history and you're getting close to 30 years old, you're pretty much on borrowed time. And any contract you're signing, to your point, is going to be related to playing. And you're not making a lot of money if you're hurt, because they're just going to structure those contracts. They're going to give you so much money guaranteed, but a lot of the bulk of the money is going to be when you're playing, how many plays, how many downs, whatever it is you get to play. Your point to Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson played 6 games did not play in 2021, as you said. He played in 6 games in 2022 and 6 games in 2023.
So he's played in 12 games in the last 3 years.
He has played 12 games in 3 years.
And there's 17-game regular season.
Yes, 17-game regular season.
My aggravation, Pat, is I hear these Browns fans, which I'm one of them, say, "Oh, it's a young team," and I'm thinking it's not a young team. What are you talking about? Myles Garrett's going to be in his 8th season this year. Denzel Ward's going to be in his 7th year.
Right.
Deshaun Watson's going to be in his 8th year. Amari Cooper's going to be in his 10th year. Okay, these are not young players. Young to me is when you're in your second year, third year, even 4th year in the NFL. That's being young. Once you get to the 5th year mark and above, you're no longer young.
No, you're not. It's well put. You're right. You're not. It's not that
from an NFL standpoint. Once you hit year 5 and above, you're not a young player anymore. And you're young when you're 22, 23, 24, not when you're 28, 29, 30. You're not a young player anymore.
No. And in the NFL, just look at the numbers and the statistics with players and age. I mean, you do have the quarterbacks that could be the outliers that could play, but a lot of players use 30 is kind of the line. You start looking at players when they're approaching 30, knowing that there's not a lot of tread left on those tires, especially in some of the, like running back has a very short career. That's why the position has been devalued. A, it's been turned to passing, but B, you could do by committee draft running back in the 4th or 5th round and use that running back and get another running back, say a veteran, and basically play running back by committee, not pay a lot of money. I know Giant fans were upset that Saquon Barkley went to the Eagles. I'm a Giant fan, and to me, it's just like, look, he was a great player. They should have never drafted him. That was another Gettleman mistake that he made. He had the 2nd overall pick in the draft, and instead of you drafted a quarterback with no offensive line, and instead of trading that pick and maybe moving down a little bit and get a couple quality offensive linemen, you took a very good running back coming out of Penn State, but you gave him no line to run behind. He's had his fair share of injuries on top of it. He's also he'll do probably well with the Philadelphia Eagles with Jalen Hurts, but the point is I could understand why the Giants did not sign him and give him a lot of money. I have a feeling, and they get Singletary out of Houston. They sign him to a very team-friendly deal. They'll draft a couple running backs maybe, and they'll do committee, and that's fine with me. But the point on it is once those running backs start to approach the 30, especially of all the positions out there, running backs hit 28, 29, they're on borrowed time. And it's highly replaceable because you can go the draft, use your 4th and 5th round pick, and get guys from any school out there, and usually plug them right into your system, and you don't have to pay them a lot of money. And especially when you're trying to shift money with quarterbacks getting way too much money and taking up a lot of your cap, you have to figure out a way of being very creative and finding a way to get a running back and not pay him a lot of money. And that's what the Giants decided not to do with Saquon, is pay him a lot of money. And I understand that. They gave Daniel Jones way too much money. And I don't know why they felt like they needed to give him what they gave him, because I don't think there was any team interested in Daniel Jones. So I'm not sure why they had to give him 40 some odd million to be your quarterback for 2 years in essence, because he has it's a 2-year contract. Even though it's 4 years, it's really 2, and they can get out of it after this year. But it gets back to, doing with what you need with running backs, paying them the amount of money. Again, not paying Saquon Barkley what he wanted. Now the Eagles paid him, and that's good. But the Eagles also probably have some issues with defense, and they're kind of rebuilding their defense. So it'll be interesting to see this year coming up. But the Giants, I understand why they didn't pay Saquon Barkley the money he wanted. But I go back to the original premise. They should have never drafted him with the 2nd overall pick. That was the Baker Mayfield draft. Baker went number 1 to Cleveland, and Saquon went number 2 to the Giants. And I would make the argument, I don't know which was worse for either team. Baker did give Baker some credit when he was healthy. He was a pretty good quarterback with Cleveland. He got him into the playoffs. I believe they won the playoff game against Pittsburgh and lost to Kansas City, a very close game. So Baker did show one thing when he was with Cleveland. When he was healthy, he wasn't a bad quarterback.
And like I said, they decided to move on from that situation, and it's just making sure. Like Watson this week was in a Twitter fight there was a Cleveland sports guy for Channel 3 up there, and has been very big diehard Cleveland sports fan, and been very, very supportive of Deshaun Watson from day one coming to Cleveland. On his Twitter account all the time. And when Joe Flacco left to go to Indianapolis, he put on his Twitter account like how he was disappointed. He was hoping Flacco would come back and be the backup quarterback for the Browns this year, etc. And Deshaun Watson blocked him on Twitter account. That's documented. The Cleveland media was talking about it in their sports talk shows Thursday and Friday. And here's one of your biggest supporters in Cleveland. That's what people are worried about. The psychological thing here that he's going. It's not physically. Obviously he's got 4, 5, 6 more months before a regular season game, so he's got a lot of time to get healthy from a physical standpoint. It's the mental thing that he obviously went through a lot of stuff with his issues off the field that went on for 18 to 24 months. That was well chronicled. And regular news stories. Forget about sports news stories. And can he bounce back from this? Can he bounce back from a big trade where everybody knows you got a guaranteed contract? Remember, the Browns of those 4 teams, remember the Panthers, Saints, Falcons, and the Browns bidding for services, and the Browns were the first one eliminated, if you recall, correct?
They were. They were.
They came back to him 48 hours later. When he signed, I was shocked because I thought we were out of it. And then all of a sudden it was like, wow, where did this come from? Well, it came from all the guaranteed money, an unprecedented contract. And that's where no one's able to explain this to me before we went to 9:30 break. Is how the Browns are able to restructure all these contracts and save money towards the salary cap. My question is, if this is legal, which I'm not saying it's not, are you kicking the can down the road where eventually you're going to pay for this stuff? Not now, but a year or 2 down the road. If the Browns are able to do this, why aren't every other NFL team doing the exact same thing the Browns are doing? That's the question I have. If they're able to always restructure contracts and move money around to save money towards the salary cap without having to trade players you like or having to cut players you really like other teams have done, like a Tyreek Hill who went to the Chiefs to the Dolphins a couple years ago, right?
Yeah, all these
they just did it with Jerry Jeudy the other day. He restructures his contract. They're saving $10 million towards the salary cap. The Browns do this with 7, 8, 9 players a year every single year. Is that money they have to give up front? Does the owner have to sign up on that and say, here's a check for $8 million, right? I don't know how that works. No one's ever been able to explain that to me.
I'm not well-versed to that.
You understand what I'm saying, though, Pat? If the Browns can do it, why doesn't 25 other NFL teams do the exact same thing?
Well, they all are. I don't know if they're doing it to the extent of the Cleveland Browns, but I hear like New Orleans with their quarterback, Carr. They restructured his contract and saved, I don't know. They restructured Carr's contract and I'll look it up, but they saved, I think, $10 million on the cap. But all these teams are always doing it with the contracts. And again, they have to do it at league rules. We're coming up halftime. Hold on, Irish Mike. It's halftime Saturday morning sports page. A lot to get to again. We'll be back after a quick timeout on Western Reserve Radio.
Hi, it's Mark Means, host of By All Means, Tuesdays at 5, right here on Western Reserve Radio, WRDB, The Scourge.
In the small town of Elmira, New York, a boy was born into an all-American family. The odds of him achieving his dream in the fashion industry? 1 in 23 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 68. I am Tommy Hilfiger, and my family is affected by autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
Driving has a rhythm all its own. Don't wreck it with a text. Before you get behind the wheel, silence your phone. Or better yet, designate a texter. For more text-free driving tips, visit stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
During the fall and winter, grilling season never ends, and Gessler Propane is your local supplier that makes sure you get your hard-earned money's worth. Why go to gas exchanges to pay higher prices for tanks not filled to capacity? Gessler Propane makes sure you're prepared for year-round grilling with 100% filled tanks at a reasonable cost. See Bob Monday through Friday, 10 to 4, and Saturday, 9 to 3 at Gessler Propane, 702 Youngstown Poland Road, Struthers, or call 330-755-9119. Gessler Propane. They got gas.
The Mahoning Valley's leader for golf, Milk Creek Golf Course, is now booking tee times for 2024. We offer stay and play opportunities available with 9 area hotel partners. For more information, visit our website at millcreekmetroparks.org. Also, look for new, exciting opportunities coming soon, including an indoor player development center with Trackman, an indoor Callaway Club Fitting Center, and an Odyssey Fitting Studio in 2024. Follow us on Facebook at Milk Creek Golf Course or call 330-740-7112.
Saturday morning sports page coming right back at you. Look at Irish. Hey, Irish Mike.
Hi, Pat.
We're back. Derek Carr's contract. I wanted to get just to give you an idea. You were talking about Cleveland restructuring contracts. Well, the New Orleans Saints restructured Derek Carr's contract, and they saved $23 million off the salary, off the cap. And he had inked a 4-year deal up to $150 million in 2023. So it always seems to me that you hear this, and they obviously maybe clear. I think Cleveland has to do a lot more of it because of the contract they have with Deshaun Watson. And I think they have to really work around that contract that they've got. So teams do it. And I think, to your point, I think Cleveland has to do a lot more of it because of that crazy contract they signed with Deshaun Watson. That's the contract issue. Now you have the playing issue, and now you've got a shoulder operation. And I know from my own personal injury that I had to my shoulder many years ago, I didn't need surgery. But the point is, I talked to a young guy that had surgery when I was doing my rehab. He says, don't let anyone ever do surgery on your shoulder because there's always a problem. And shoulders are funny because there's a lot going on in there according to my acupuncture guy, he says, no, there's a lot of muscles. The shoulders are tough. And it's just, if you're a quarterback and it's your throwing shoulder and it's hurt, you got to be a little, if you're a fan like yourself of the Cleveland Browns, you have to be concerned, what will Deshaun Watson be like when he comes back from this injury?
Yeah.
Can he throw the ball down the field with the zip? Can he hit that 25-yard down and out, throw that ball like he needs to on a line, or throw it down and into the, in between corners and hit the receiver in the hands where you had to put a lot of zip on it? I don't know.
Because I don't even think he's back throwing a ball yet. I know when he had his surgery in late October, early November, they said it was at least 6 months before he could pick up a ball.
So your question's going to be, this year coming up, is Deshaun Watson, going to be 100% back to the old Deshaun Watson that we traded for? Or now is he going to have some issues with the shoulder? It may take him another year to get kind of acclimated and get the shoulder in shape to throw the ball where he needs to throw it. I'm just asking questions here. And genuine concern, being a Brown fan. And again, getting back to the contract, one reason maybe why you don't give quarterbacks all a bunch of guaranteed money is because, if you ever notice, you've brought it up before, pay attention to the guaranteed money. And a lot of times these teams, because of the way they have these contracts structured, they can maneuver money. Like Patrick Mahomes' contract, they're talking about restructuring the contract a lot more so they could save more money in getting free agents off the cap. But the point is, and they always say the longer the contract, the more flexibility the team has with restructuring money, and less guaranteed money is where they get away with being able to move money around. But the more guaranteed money on the contract, I think the team is limited to how much they can restructure on that contract, would be my guess. And that's why Cleveland is restructuring other players' contracts, because they're really working around the Deshaun Watson contract that, again, they signed into all that money, all that guaranteed money. And I don't think they can do a lot of, I think they did restructure some of his contract, but you still, again, you get back to that dead cap hit. And that's the other thing with that contract. You really can't, A, trade him because nobody wants the contract. B, you can't cut them loose because of the dead cap hit on the team. You'd have trouble putting a team on the field with that kind of debt. That's what Denver is going through right now with Russell Wilson dead cap of $85 million. Is, they really can't go out and find themselves a quarterback and pay him a lot of money because of that dead cap hit. They're probably going to go through the draft and draft, potentially whatever they could draft coming out of the this field, and maybe someone will drop to them and they'll draft a quarterback out of this draft. But again, Denver's kind of in a tough spot because now you got $85 million of dead cap money that now you have to work around that.
Yeah,
and it's a tough nut if you're a GM. Again, not to beat the Deshaun Watson thing to a pulp, but you got a bad contract. You can't get rid of him. And now you have a player you don't even know. We don't know if he's going to be anywhere near 100%.
That's why, you sign Jerry Jeudy, you make all these other moves, and, people get excited about it, but it's all going to come back to the quarterback situation, how his health is, physically and mentally. Let me emphasize the word mentally.
Yes.
And emotionally, where he's at. That's going to be the big key factor in 2024. So all these other moves are great, but like my brother-in-law just texted me, Andrew Berry's in line to get a contract extension. Well, you could talk about all these other moves, but the biggest move you made might be the one that holds you back as an organization, as a team.
No, yeah. You've got to. The only problem with Cleveland, you've got two real detriments that they have to work around. They've got the Deshaun Watson contract, and now you've got Deshaun Watson. Is he healthy enough to play quarterback, and is he going to be the same quarterback you signed to this contract, 3 years ago? And that's going to be the big question is, I guess if it's one thing, if he comes back and he's contributing, he's playing, he's moving, the team's winning and he's playing great. Okay. You overlook the contract because you're getting a performance. But if he comes back and he struggles and now you're looking at, well, you got to put Jameis Winston in because either Deshaun's hurt again or he just doesn't have any zip on the ball. Now you're stuck with a player who is not performing up to his contract. And that is if you look at any in sports itself, the worst thing a team can have is a player who doesn't perform up to his contract. And if they severely underperform the contract, then it really becomes a detriment to the team. Obviously, the teams want everybody right.
It came out earlier this week that the Cleveland Media reported, it was probably Monday or Tuesday, multiple outlets had it. So I don't think that either Denzel Ward and or Greg Newsome, probably not both, were not on the trading block, but for the right price, the Browns would be willing to move them for the right price. They're not actively shopping them, but for the right price, they would shop. You know what I mean? Trade one of those two guys.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt. The thing is, here's the thing in the NFL, what you have to look at is if you have an older player that's a good player and you basically have a situation where you can trade him and save on the contract because like Denzel, I'm looking at it. Ward signed a 5-year, $100 million extension back in 2022, and he's under contract until 2027.
And there's another guy that's had a problem staying on the field consistently, correct?
Right. Denzel Ward's had his fair share of injury. The problem you have with Ward is if they get rid of him today, if they decide they take a $12 million cap hit. If they're going to do it, that's why they're talking about it, is because next year the dead cap hit goes up to $24 million. It doubles. Then after that, the dead cap goes to $30 million. So the point on it is this: if
you're keeping him back this year, then you got to keep him through the duration of the contract.
You kind of almost, yeah, and that's why they're thinking now is you got a guy, good player. He's 26 years old. He's going to be 27 very soon. The point on it is
going to the 7th year.
Yes. He's into his 6th year. He's got 5 years. The point on it is, your point is that if you're going to make the move now to trade him, this would be the time to do it because the cap hit's only $12 million. The cap hit goes up significantly. It doubles after this year. So that's why they're almost floating it out there, because they're saying, and they could always figure we can look at the draft and look to draft a corner maybe in the 3rd, 4th round that could take his spot.
Yeah, he'll be entering his 7th year this season, and the injuries have been the issue more than with him and anything.
Right, and you've got a guy, good player, great player, very good, but with the injury factor coming in, and the fact that you're looking at dead cap and contracts, now you start looking at bottom line is, do we consider maybe moving him? If we're going to do it, we do it this year. Because they did restructure his contract so they could save on the cap. But if they basically want to I have to go back. I made a mistake. That was the cap hit. His dead cap is $42 million. My fault on Denzel. They had to take a $42 million cap hit if they trade him this year.
Oh, okay.
And $30 million next year. That's dead cap. The cap hit was $12 million this year, $24 million next year, but the dead cap money is $42 million. That's a pretty good hit. So I'm not sure if they're going to try to trade him or not. But maybe they think about, if they trade him, do they look at drafting another player coming out of college with the idea that they could potentially just get rid of the contract and get a rookie. And there are a lot of teams that obviously do it. Ever notice that when you look at these trades with these teams where they always they're like, and you go, why are they flipping around? Like, why are they getting 6 round, 7 round picks? Like, who cares? No, teams like those draft picks a lot because if they get lucky and hit on that, they have a very favorable contract for the team. So if they could draft these guys and if they hit on a 4th and 5th round pick or a 6th round pick, that's gold. Because especially if you, again, and that gets back to what we were talking about, underperforming a contract or outperforming a contract. If you get a 6th or 5th round pick who comes in and plays so good, like the Cleveland Browns big tackle they got from Ohio State.
The right tackle?
The right tackle.
Yeah, they took him in the 4th round last year,
A 4th rounder. And before he got hurt, he might have been one of the best tackles in the game. He was a rookie, but he's what is he, 340, 350 pounds? Maybe he's more than that, but he's got great footwork and he knows how to use his body to protect the quarterback. But the point is, I'm using him as strictly an example. I'll get the name here, but when you can get a guy in the 4th round who becomes your starter and can play that good, and like he's really contributing to the team, you've just hit gold, because now you've got a guy you're paying him 4th round money, and he's a big contribution. He's totally outperforming the contract. And that's the key. And that's what all the NFL teams. The worst case is the other end of the spectrum we talked about, when you have a player, a Deshaun Watson, who's not playing and you're paying him all that money. And now
DeJuan Jones, correct?
Yeah, that's it. DeJuan Jones. An unbelievable player out of Ohio State, a 4th round pick. And, Cleveland looks like geniuses that they took a chance on this guy. And, again, he might be one of the best. He might be in the argument of maybe a top 5 tackle. He's 6'8" and 374. Played for Ohio State. But again, when you get lucky and get a guy like that can play, especially an offensive lineman, and you can get an offensive lineman that plays that good with a 4th round pick, you've just hit the mother lode. The other thing, trying to slide over a little bit, I just saw that Notre Dame and they've signed with this college football. They've signed the deal basically that they're going to have the 14-team playoff.
Correct.
So I guess they had to have Notre Dame had to sign off on that, because now is it still where Notre Dame can't get a bye?
Correct. Yes.
Right. So Notre Dame will have to play, but they're not in the conference, so they don't have to worry about a conference championship.
That is correct. Yes.
So I guess it's going to work out for them. But I still think it's strange, because if Notre Dame goes on a roll, say they go undefeated, and maybe they're ranked like number 2 in the country, they would still have to play a 1st round game. They don't qualify for a bye.
That is correct. Yes. Now I told you that their argument would be that they don't have to play in a conference championship game either. So that would be another bye. Like this season, you and I, Dave, talked about this a couple weeks ago. They have a bye, I want to say, in early October, and then they have a bye in the middle of November, and then they would have another bye in conference championship week on December 7th. So they would get 3 byes before the playoffs.
I see. Yeah, because I think all the teams now in college football will get 2 byes.
Correct.
This is the first year for this where
I guess their perspective is this, Pat. Let's just use we'll use Oregon just for example, because they're in the Pac-10 or Big Ten now. Oregon, let's suppose they play Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, and they lose. Then they're going to make the Final Four, or they're going to make the playoffs still, but now they won't get a bye.
Right.
So, but as you said, the first I didn't know this until you and Dave read this up a couple weeks ago. The first tournament games don't start till the weekend of December 20th, 21st.
Right.
Correct? So in essence, that would give Notre Dame after the regular season game ended November 30th at Stanford. That would give them 3 weeks to get ready for a game because you're going to have back-to-back bye weeks.
Right. As of right now, Notre Dame's last game is at USC, November 30th. That's their last game. If their
first tournament game was not till December 21st, that's 21 days in between games.
Yes.
So that's back to that. So if you're in Oregon and you lose December 7th to Ohio State, you're still going to get 14 days to get ready for that
playoff game. Right.
Yes.
There's right. You said December 20th is the start of the college football playoff. So, and then that obviously it breaks down as, like I said, December 20th, they get the first round, December 20th, and then it goes from there. And then I believe they play the championship game on January 7th.
That's correct, yes. I think next year they said the championship game is on Monday night, January 20th, because that's Inauguration Day.
Yep.
So, normally we're done. I think this year was January 8th, the final was, so you're extending it out by another 2 weeks. And what we laughed about, I think we even Dave, was the fact that a lot of these schools have started spring practice already. Now they're on hiatus because of spring break week, but usually start spring practice in the north the first or second week of March. If you make it to January 20th, your kids are going to be about 7 weeks off between their season starting spring practice all over again.
No, you're right. I mean, when you break it down as far as how that plays out, yeah, I mean, they're going to end in January, late January, and then obviously they start the spring football April, May.
Yeah. Like Ohio State spring games this year is April 13th, and Notre Dame's is April 20th, a week later.
So
yeah, they both started spring practice already. I think Ohio State's had 2 or 3 spring practices. Notre Dame's had one. They're on spring break this week, and their second practice will be Wednesday the 20th.
Right.
And then they take Notre Dame's different than Ohio State because they take a hiatus over, Easter's coming up in a couple weeks, so they take 4 or 5 days off over that time period too because, obviously they don't want to practice at that time of year.
Right. So March 31st is Easter. So bottom line is they'll miss that out. Yeah, they obviously.
And here's what people forget, Pat, and I know you follow this. The spring, now the basketball portal opens up on Monday, March 18th, and goes to May 1st for basketball.
Right.
But for football, it opens back up again April 15th and goes to May 1st. So there's that 2.5, 3 week time period where kids after spring football, we knew the portal in late December, early January, we had a lot of movement there. But when spring football practices, then you're going to see a lot more movement again because guys are going to say, when they come out of spring football, most kids have a pretty good idea at these major universities where they stand on the depth chart. You know that, and I know that.
Yeah. No, well put. Yes, exactly. So you're going to see, that's where you're going to see if these kids realize they're too far down on the depth chart, they're going to be looking to transfer out.
I told my buddies, all those kids decided to come back to Ohio State for another year. They got good NIL deals. That's why they came back. You know that, and I know that. But now you have younger players in the roster, guys you really like, who look at the situation and say, geez, I'm going to sit on the bench again. Or maybe not sit on the bench, but instead of getting 30 to 35, 40 snaps a game, I'm only going to get 10 to 15.
Right.
So when spring practice ends and I can get my name in the portal, I'm going to go in the portal again in late April. And I'm leaving. And these are guys you really like and you want them to stay. They don't want to go through the idea of I got to sit for another year because these older guys decided to stay that we were not anticipating.
Exactly. Then the problem ultimately you're going to have, and that's a lot of the critics. I know Nick Saban, you had sent me an interesting piece of information, what Nick Saban thought with problem with college football, and players aren't staying to develop. And they're and they're not even going to be like develop. They're not going to develop like build like a network with players and coaches at a school because they're moving on. So they're not going to have that network where, they've got people they can relate to and maybe get their name out there. They don't have relationships there because they're really not there long enough to really get relationships. So but they're constantly moving. And then obviously there's a whole debate about what happens if, as far as their education goes, where I know a lot of people have put that on the back burner, and to the point where, because of NIL and the money involved.
We can always talk about the bag man in the SEC. We've heard that phrase for 25 years about the bag man. But I know that of the top 20 schools, Alabama is probably not in the top 20 as far as NIL deals for their football players. That's been documented.
Right.
He sold kids coming out of high school, hey, you come here, we'll develop you, we'll get you the NFL. So, kids were willing to take, quote, less of an NIL deal to go to Alabama. Like Caleb Downs is a great football player. He could have stayed at Alabama for 2 more years and gone to the NFL. There was no reason for him to go to Ohio State or the other rumor was go to Georgia, right?
Right.
Why did he go there? And I know why he went, right? Let's be honest. Right? It was a much better NIL deal. He's driving around in a $75,000 automobile right now through the Columbus area.
Right. Because
I'm okay with that. I'm not criticizing it, but don't kid yourself that's why these guys are doing the things they're doing.
Right. And that's why college, and that's why a lot of the not a lot, but some coaches are getting out of it.
Yeah.
A lot of, like Chip Kelly went from head coach UCLA to offensive coordinator for Ohio State. Chip doesn't have to worry about money. He had, he's got, I'm sure he got oodles of money through being the NFL head coach the years with San Francisco.
I'm not trying to make you. I'm being dead serious with you, Pat Lucia. I've talked to multiple times about different situations. I could see this being Ryan Day's last year at Ohio State. Okay, here's why. Okay, if they go where they want them to go, and they spend a lot of money down there, these boosters, on this NIL stuff. Okay, it's NIL/boosters. They're not paying for second place.
No.
Okay, so if he gets where he wants to get to, and the fans want him to get to, then he could pull Jim Harbaugh and said, I accomplished all I did here. Now it's time to move on to the National Football League. And it'll be more attractive, especially winning a national title, if your team's playing that well for pro coach. Now, the timeline gets a little bit sketchy because now the national championship game is not till Monday, January 20th, when we used to be like Monday, January 7th.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I don't know. Some teams might, but if you got a coach you want, you're willing to wait till the 3rd week of January to hire him. So I could see that scenario playing out. Or the other scenario playing out is, they get upset by Michigan again this year, or somehow don't win as many games as you want, then he'll be out. They'll let him go, right?
Well, and therein lies the. That's an excellent point. That's
what I'm saying. It could work in either direction. Win real big and go and say, if he wins real big, he'd be crazy to stay at Ohio State because the National Football League's going to offer you more money and less headaches with this. And these coaches don't want to deal with this stuff. They're lying to you if they say they do. You know that, and I know that. They don't want to deal with the NIL stuff. They don't want to. They don't want to have to. You got to recruit your players constantly. Just think about next month. All these major programs, when that portal opens from April 15th to May 1st, you're going to have to re-recruit kids to stay.
And that's what
the same kids you had to re-recruit 3 months ago, right?
And that's the problem you've got right now with coaches is, especially maybe the coaches that have been around and they know like the way it used to be and the way it's evolving, they're to the point where they really don't want to go through it.
Yes.
And they just don't want.
And I was, came into this 4 or 5 years going, it's not going away. It's going to get worse. And, like Krzyzewski said, and Nick Saban said, nobody got out ahead of this 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago to get ahead of the game on all this. They got, and now they're paying the consequences, and it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. But at the end of the day, there's still a lot more money in the NFL than what these NIL deals. You know that, and I know that. In pro football, there's, especially with guaranteed signing bonuses, you can make you can make 10 times the amount than some of these NIL deals you're getting in college.
Right. No, and that's, I mean, and the only thing you have to be careful with the NIL deals is, I know what the press reports isn't always the actual deal. And I always caution, read the fine print in the NIL deal.
Because if we ever go pay to play, Pat, pay to play, let's just make them employees and start paying them. A lot of ADs said we're going to have to cut a lot of other sports, these, non-revenue sports, and these Olympic sports have to be cut from our programs. But you also risk of cutting guys. You tell a 19-year-old, we gave you this deal and you're not as good as we thought you were. You're not performing up to status. We're going to cut you. But there goes your money. You're gone. Go find another school.
Well,
so if they want to go down this road, you can be cut when you're 19, 20 years old, just like any other person in the business world. You might be let go by your employer.
Well, and if they go, we're coming up on our break, and we're going to talk about this in the fourth quarter of the show. About that whole with the pay to play, and do colleges make them employees? We'll talk more about that coming up. It is the Saturday Morning Sports Page. Irish Mike with me this morning, and I'm Pat Lucia. We'll come back with the fourth quarter of the show on Western Reserve Radio after a quick timeout.
Hey, let me ask you something. Would you seat your 3-year-old child on a windowsill? Would you seat them beside a lit fireplace or by the deep end of a pool? One last question. Would you seat your child in a car seat that's not correct for them? Car crashes are a leading killer of children ages 1 to 13. Secure their future. Seat them in the correct car seat. For more information, visit safercar.gov/the-right-seat. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Welcome to Calvin's Barbershop.
You all got to see this.
I don't even want to know what you're looking at on that phone.
Well, you should. I was learning about the dangers of high blood pressure and that we need to get ours checked regularly. High blood pressure can increase the risk of heart attack or stroke, but this text program can help keep it at a healthy range. Just text Barbershop to 97779 to sign up.
I'll get right on it as soon as I'm done with this baby panda video.
Text Barbershop to 97779. A message from the American Heart Association and the Ad Council.
WWE superstar Alberto Del Rio. Take one.
Behold the angry giant.
Try it again, Alberto.
Behold the angry giant.
Perfect. Good luck tonight.
Behold the angry giant.
Yay! Read me another one, Dad.
This is WWE superstar Alberto Del Rio. It only takes a moment to make a moment. Take time to be a dad today.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
I'm getting older. Do I need to worry about falling?
Yes, you do. Each year, 1 in 4 people 65 and older will experience a fall, and many will be serious. The majority of falls happen at home, so remove things that could make you trip and install handrails to keep you steady. To learn more about the steps you can take to help prevent a fall, please talk to your doctor. You can also visit aarpfoundation.org or medicaremadeclear.com/falls. This message was brought to you by United Healthcare and AARP Foundation.
Saturday Morning Sports Page back at you. Let's get Irish Mike. Hey, Irish Mike.
Yes.
We're back. Yeah. What, getting into this whole pay for play, what you're going to, and I don't think this will happen, but if it does, we're talking about, okay, if the colleges, which I don't think will do, because all of them can't do this, meaning Bowling Green, Miami of Ohio, they can't do this. They can't pay their players.
No,
they don't have the revenue stream to do it. They could do the scholarship thing, status quo. But the point on it is this, is if you open up the door to pay the player, in all probability, the players are now going to get a union.
Yeah.
And now you're going to get a union chief to deal with. And then they're going to, you're talking about contracts and cutting them. And then they're going to have contracts for these players. And that's why the colleges are saying we can't do that. Because we can't basically have them employees and give them contracts, because how much do we pay them? And, now you have to negotiate all these contracts with all these players.
I feel like there was always bagmen in college football. You talk about in your day going to Ohio State,
right.
Just players being around, et cetera. Back in the 50s, 60s, we understood that. But, the cost of college tuition has gone up drastically in the last 25 years.
Oh, totally.
And the reality is, if you were in scholarship in some of these schools, like Notre Dame, root board tuition is now $70,000 a year. I'm not good at math, but that's over $250,000 in a 4-year time period.
Exactly.
And no one takes that into consideration. No. Like you just said in the last segment, Pat, education's out the door. And when fans come to the stadium, they don't, I know you've told this for me for 25 years since you've had a show. They don't care if you're going to class or not, you're taking tests or writing papers. They don't care about any of that stuff. They care about being at the water cooler on Monday morning saying, we won.
Did we win? Right.
Yeah. Right?
No.
So they don't care if players aren't going to class or they're not graduating or they're not doing any of that stuff. Most fans could care less about that stuff.
Well, and here's been the ultimate problem. One of the problems, I should say, is you've got players. When you read that just the college football playoff alone is going to be over $1 billion a year for 6 years. Now, I know there was talk about they haven't signed that yet, but that's what that's the number they're looking at, well over $1 billion. TV will pay that much for it. Then you look at teams in the Big Ten like UCLA and USC. Why did they leave the Pac-12 to come? Exactly. Because they get, I believe, I had this conversation yesterday with my father, and I was talking about, I believe those schools get, just from the Big Ten network alone, I believe they get well over $50 million. I think it's closer to $60 million.
And USC broke up the Pac-12, let's be honest.
Right. They didn't have a
I know
TV.
UCLA came on board, but we think of UCLA, we think of basketball and John Wooden more than the football program. And, and they've had up and down years in the football program. It's been more down than up with UCLA football as far as the last 25, 30 years. And,
right.
But USC broke up the whole conference.
Exactly. That's what killed the Pac-12 is they didn't have the payout that the Big Ten network. These schools get $58.8 million, like Nebraska, Maryland, and Rutgers. So that's why these schools left the Pac-12 and joined the Big Ten. They don't care about travel. They don't care the fact that geographically, you're basically flying players over the country from Rutgers to UCLA to play. You got to realize women's volleyball, men's baseball, all the quote non-revenue sports. You're still moving these people around. You still got to fly the players around the country to play these schools that are 3,000 miles away. So bottom line's going to be you're paying, but they don't really care about the players. And how do the players attend class when, I don't know, the women's volleyball team or the men's baseball team is flying across the country and they're playing Oregon and Washington and UCLA in 1 week, say the baseball team or the volleyball team does. They're not going to come back. They're staying out there. I guess they're going to they do their classes online. And then the coach has to make sure that the players go to their class while they're out there. Good luck. But the point is...
and I think, isn't everyone kind of anticipating the next 4 to 6 months, the ACC collapsing, right? Whether it be Florida State or the Carolina, North Carolina,
right?
Virginia. I think there's another school involved in all that stuff. Clemson. North Carolina and Clemson.
And Florida State.
State's got a lawsuit against the ACC.
Right.
They clear. People ask me about Notre Dame all the time. All they can say, as far as I know, they want to stay independent. They're waiting to see where the shoe drops with the ACC. And if they try to get out, they owe them the money. But if the ACC dissolves, then they don't owe anybody any money.
Right. That's the key. The key right now, and to your point, Notre Dame is sitting there waiting.
And I've had friends argue who love Ohio State. Oh, it's crap. They haven't been in conference the last 35 years. They have the elite thing, blah, blah, blah. That's independent stuff, And I get it. And I said, you don't think they're smart, though? They've made a lot of money off this. I mean, at the end of the day, everyone wants to make money. That's what this is about. It's about money. So you might not like them, but at the end of the day, they know what they're doing.
Oh, no. They know exactly what they're doing.
Correct. And the guys they have run the athletic department, I don't think are the strongest sports guys. They're more business people. They're corporate lawyers, been doing this for 40 years. So they're ahead of the game in regards to how all these contract works and, what the parameters are. My buddy sent me that thing that you're talking about, the college football playoffs. They said they're talking to all the conferences and Notre Dame. It said 3 times during the article. They're talking to 3 conferences and Notre Dame. Because they're not going to be left out. The only way they're going to be forced to join a conference in the next 2 or 3 years if schools start saying, Pat, we're not going to play you. They tell all the schools, don't play them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Here's an idea, what you said about like schools leaving the ACC and why Notre Dame is just kind of laying back in the weeds, sort of to speak, and waiting this out. This means that if Florida State or any other school looking to jump ship would not receive an annual revenue distributions from the ACC or a new conference that they would ultimately go to. A graphic shows that the Florida State Board of Trustees said it would cost them $572 million to break grant of the rights. So they're looking basically to lose $572 million if they leave the ACC. So they're fighting that, and they're trying to sue and saying they don't want, they shouldn't have to be responsible for that. But at the end of the day, when you start looking at that kind of money, that's why they're in a lawsuit with the ACC, and that's why Notre Dame is waiting, because they don't want to pay that amount of money or be responsible for losing that kind of money. Because then they have to go back to the boosters, and that's how we always crack up. Now they got to go to the boosters and say, "Hey, if we leave the ACC, we're going to need a lot of money from the boosters to do it." But when you're talking about billions of dollars and millions of dollars being thrown around, when you get back to the premise of, well, the players, they're athletes, they're amateurs, they shouldn't be paid. But then when you start looking at all the money and then the TV contracts with these schools are just insane.
Correct. It's crazy.
So you get the other end of the coin, and you brought up a good point. Well, the cost of an education, like if the 4 years at Notre Dame is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about $300 million when you throw books and all, at least
pushing 300,000.
300,000. I mean, it's $300,000 is what a young person would get going to Notre Dame. That they get the scholarship and the books and all the other taken care of. That's
meals, entities, living, etc.
Right. And now we're getting into this discussion that you want to turn around and pay the players, but the reality is, what do you start paying? Even Ohio State, what are you going to pay the backup tackles?
4 years of Ohio State, you're probably looking at $150,000, $160,000 after 4 years.
Yeah, you probably are. With Ohio, after 4 years at Ohio State, figuring the amount, you're probably looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of about $150,000.
Correct. And so fans and people just throwing education out the door and saying, well, we don't even count that anymore.
Yeah, and that's right.
It's kind of weird. So then don't call them student athletes anymore, because that's a blatant lie.
Right. But someone would argue with you that they really have never really been student athletes, or it's really up to the athlete. I always kind of almost put it this way. It's up to the athlete. Do they want to be a student? To some degree in your bigger schools. Now, if you have a young person going to a Miami or a Bowling Green or a Northern Illinois or, though the schools that aren't not in that big top 50 range, the lower tier schools, that's different, because those kids are going to go to class, utilize the scholarship. And those scholarships, I mean, if you're out of, those scholarships are $150,000, $200,000 dollars. If you're going to go to a Bowling Green, you're out of state, and you have a full ride scholarship. That's a good deal, because if you play football and you're a backup tackle playing at Bowling Green, you're getting all your books and room and board paid for. That's a good deal. Maybe if you're good enough to get into the NFL, but the whole point of it is, now those schools, like you said, they can't pay those players that. But these bigger schools that have the $1 billion TV or involved with the TV money, getting the big money, that's where there's this discussion about paying players, but then where do you start and stop that? And then, what do you pay your backup quarterback, and how do you negotiate those contracts? Then they become employees of the school.
Correct.
So that's why we've talked about this on the show, opening up that can of worms. And that's why the schools want absolutely nothing to do with paying the players, is because of where do you start and stop. And then if they go ahead and they get a union involved, now you have to negotiate a contract, and the union, the person over the union is going to basically say, okay, they're going to put restrictions on how you can utilize the player, like the NFL and all the other professional sports all have unions. So you're going to be dealing with that. And then what are you going to tell schools like a Miami and Bowling Green? You guys don't qualify, or we can't pay our players. Or I think you brought it up, they may not have, if you tell Miami, Bowling Green of the world, I'm using them strictly an example, you have to pay your players, in essence, they will probably not have the sport.
Or they'll drop down to the FCS level.
Right.
Like
or they go down a level and say, we're going to drop down the level so we don't have to pay the players, because we can't.
Correct.
But then you might have other schools doing that, because they're going to have to weigh out the TV money. And right now we know that the way it's structured is the schools are using all the money that football makes, and they fund the other non-profit
and
sports.
I would think too, Pat, Lucia, that, with this NIL stuff, or paying like kids who stay in college that extra year, and, I'll stay one more year, get my NIL money, they're probably not going to be as high draft pick in NFL as they wanted to be. Am I wrong?
Correct.
You could have talked all day you wanted about Marvin Harrison Jr. He was never staying the senior year, because at the end of the day, he's going to make a lot more money in the NFL than he would on any NIL deal with Ohio State. That. Yeah. I know that. So there was no conversation there.
Well, and the other reason,
top flight guys are going to make their money from day one in the NFL. So there's no reason to stay an extra year in school for an NIL deal. So guys that stayed were probably guys, maybe they're going to be second. They want to be first round draft picks, and they're second round picks now, or they want to be first or second round draft picks right now. But if they went this year, they'd be a third round draft pick. That's why they stayed, right?
Yeah, because they want to move up in the draft with the idea that they can ultimately make more, get higher draft pick, get a better contract. But Marvin Harrison wasn't staying because why put off that NFL contract another year? You want to start that contract right now.
Correct.
You're right.
Yeah.
He was never.
And your bigger money's in the second contract, not the first. And you're putting that off by another year by staying another year in school.
Exactly. The quicker you get to the NFL and start the clock on your first contract, hopefully you have a very good career. And it's the second contract where you make the big money. I mean, the first contract, it's limited. I mean, they don't have holdouts anymore, because now it's basically in the union agreement with the players coming out of college. This is how much you're going to make, depending on where you're drafted. That's it. It's not really negotiable, because that's how the union, that's why, you remember years ago, you used to read about players holding out, rookies coming out, holding out, and they weren't going to play because they didn't like the rookie deal they were getting. Well, now the players, that's NBA basketball and football, solve that problem. They just said, okay, they got with the union, and the union agreed to it because they don't want rookies making more than the veterans anyway. So they agreed to it and say, yeah, we have to limit the kids coming out of college on how much they're going to make. So now you don't have any more holdouts coming out of college, because their contract is pretty much set in stone, where they're drafted, and that's how much you're pretty much going to make. I mean, they could play with a little money here and there, but bottom line, it's in there pretty much set in stone.
And especially think about the running back position in the NFL. Like, take Ezekiel Elliott. Now, he'll be 29 in this coming July, this season. I mean, and a lot of people think his best days in the NFL are behind him, right?
And they are, probably.
Yes. I mean, with a running back, you're getting hit constantly. And, I know people are excited. The Baltimore Ravens signed Derrick Henry. And look like, with him, Lamar Jackson. But you're not getting the same Derrick Henry you had 4 or 5 years ago either. Like when he was 25 or 26. I mean, the running back spot, I was semi-surprised Trayvon Henderson came back for another year at Ohio State. Now, obviously, he hasn't had the career yet that we expected him when he came out of high school as a 5-star kid. But as a running back, you're putting in another less year in your career in the NFL, too. I mean, so it becomes tricky. Usually that's one spot you encourage guys to leave early and say, there's only so many carries you can in the NFL before, you hit 27 or 28, and they say, we can find another younger guy better than you for a lot less money.
You brought up Ezekiel Elliott's contract, okay? He is now, for the record, he is an unrestricted free agent. When he signed with New England in 2023 at the age of 28, he signed a 1-year deal, $3 million contract with New England. It had a $600,000 signing bonus, $1.1 million guaranteed money. Then they had the incentives and all that in there, but the bottom line is it was a 1-year, $3 million contract. He is going to be 29 years old this 2024, and he's a free agent. Where do you think, his earning days are behind him. He got the big contract with Jerry Jones in Dallas. And the sad part was when Elliott signed that deal, he didn't play very well. He was out of shape, didn't look good. And he was really never the same running back after they signed.
And as a free agent, believe it or not, he may return to Dallas, right? That might be an option for him.
It could be an option for him.
The Bills or somebody, right? And so they're looking for a running back. Maybe not a starter, but a guy that can carry the ball 7 to 10 times a game.
Exactly. And they'll turn around and probably pay him somewhere another 1 year deal.
Yeah. 1 year, $3 million.
Exactly.
1 year, $4 million.
Right. And they'll structure it so much is guaranteed. But the point is, he's been in the league 7 years. His better years are obviously behind him. He was, for the record, he was drafted first round, 4th pick overall in 2016.
Yeah, he just finished his 8th year in the NFL. He'll be in year number 9.
Right. So bottom line is he's done. He's probably going to play, but he's not going to make, he's not the money. The days of making big money are behind him. Whether or not he's done, probably not. I think some team will pick him up. And like you said.
Oh, yeah. He could play for another 3 or 4 years without him, but it'll be on 1 year contract for $3 or $4 million a year.
Exactly.
He's not going to get a 4-year contract worth $60 million. That ship sails.
No. And that's what the first I talked about a little bit is when you look about it, is like when you look at the Giants not wanting to pay Saquon Barkley the money he wanted. A lot of people are upset. Giant fans were. But my approach was, great running back. They don't have a line that's very good. They should have never drafted him. But the whole point of it is he's gone through an ACL injury. You got to start looking at it as, how much do you want to pay Saquon Barkley and start guaranteeing it when the realization is his contract, his better years are probably behind him.
Yeah, exactly.
He's 27 years old. He just turned 27. He's, as we said, he's coming up on that 30-year, that mark. And you start looking at him and you're thinking, okay, how much money, what does he have left in the tank or the proverbial, what do we talk about? The tread on the tires. But these running backs are basically now have been obviously devalued because teams can get around with drafting the guys in the 3rd and 4th round, get them under a rookie contract for 3 to 4 years, and then after that, let them go and go after another player, and then draft another one. Or you could take the approach, if you're a GM, you draft a running back out of college every year with your 4th or 5th round picks.
That's why you're seeing a lot of traded veterans now, because they have their roster bonuses coming up sometime in the middle.
Yeah.
You know, like the Browns today, Keller and Joel Batoni and a couple other guys that, you know, we'll know by the end of the day if they get their $3 or $4 million bonuses by being on the roster, or if they'll be cut or traded, because teams deal with that dilemma all the time. Keenan Allen just got traded to the Bears yesterday, the day before, because the Chargers, he wouldn't restructure his contract, and he would do a big bonus on Sunday for March 17th.
Right.
And they traded him.
And they traded him. Right.
And so the Bears, now you pay him the $5 million, whatever it is.
Yeah, you pick up the contract.
Yes.
And that goes back.
They cut Mike Williams, so Harbaugh's come in right away and got rid of the 2 starting wide receivers. So I'm sure pick number 5, they would probably love to have Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm sure if he's available, they would definitely take him.
No doubt. And then they also got Khalil Mack and Bosa to restructure their contracts.
Correct. Yes.
Because when Harbaugh took over, they were in cap hell. Well, as you've just stated, with the wide receivers, Keenan Allen, they traded him. Williams, they got rid of, and then they're going to have Khalil Mack and Bosa restructure their contracts. So
Bosa is another guy that's always hurt, right?
But again,
can never stay on the field,
right? And he's getting a lot of money, and he's always hurt.
Exactly.
No, I mean,
and he's in year number 9 or 10 too, so he's not the same player he was 4 or 5 years. I argued with one of my buddies, and I said, "Your biggest, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, Cavs, Browns, or Guardians, you get enamored with these big name players, and when they sign with our teams, I don't get as excited because my first thought is, well, they're not the same player they were 3, 4, 5 years ago. Yeah, it's a big name, it's a very recognizable name that everyone's going to recognize right away." But I remember being in high school, they signed Phil Niekro and Steve Carlton right at the end of their careers. And everyone was so excited about the Indians doing that in the late 80s. I'm thinking, geez, they're on their very last leg. You're not getting the guy that they were the pitchers they were 5, 6, 7 years ago.
No.
So, if Joey Bosa came to the Browns tomorrow to be the opposite side, I wouldn't be that excited saying, well, we're not getting the same Joey Bosa who played in the NFL back in 2020 either.
Well, if that would be the case, if Joey Bosa, first of all,
the linebacker was rumored to be coming to Cleveland. The kid out of Buffalo, what's his name? He played with the Bears and the Raiders. Khalil Mack.
Yeah,
that was one of the big rumors 2 weeks ago. Oh, Khalil Mack's gonna be in Cleveland. I'm thinking he's 33 years old now. He's not the same guy he was 5 or 6 years ago.
Well, to kind of give you an idea, they just both, like I said, they restructured the contract. Bosa took a pay cut of $22 million to $15 million.
Okay.
But got his salary fully guaranteed and can earn $4 million back through sack incentives. Khalil Mack reduced his contract from $23 million to $19 million and cannot be franchise tagged. Bosa was due $7 million roster bonus on Friday, and that put a timeline on the decision under his contract. Now he's due $12.3 million bonus on the first day of the 2025
year. To get those
year.
bonuses, Pat, they're going to have to play in games in 2024, right?
Right.
Be able to performance with them, so you got to be on the field.
Exactly.
You're standing on the sideline street clothes, you ain't getting those bonuses when it amounts to, correct?
Right.
And I think you're going to see more teams doing that, don't you think, Pat? You're going to see more incentive laden to be on the field playing because we understand torn ACLs and but these hamstrings that last for 2 months and you miss 7 or 8 games hurts our team.
You see, it said the Chargers could have saved roughly $14 million. That would be $22 million in dead money by cutting or trading Bosa, but instead will keep him around while kicking the can down the road is what the article is on. So they were ready to cut, and Khalil Mack were the same ways, and they called both players in, and I think they were pretty much saying, look, we're probably going to cut you guys to take the dead cap hit, or if you restructure the contracts, we'll keep you. So both players said, no, we'll go ahead and go with the restructures because I think.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah, because you said it too. Khalil Mack was probably going to be a Cleveland Brown potentially. And
yes,
Cleveland,
I heard that 2 weeks ago from multiple people.
Right.
Because they assumed he was going to get cut.
So, and now with Bosa, after this year, he plays one more year with the Chargers. He's 29 years old. Next year, if they decide they want to get rid of him, their dead cap hit is only $7.6 million for Bosa. Yeah. So he'll play this year, no doubt, because he restructured the deal. But ultimately, if they want to get rid of him after this year, they can.
Yes.
And they only take a $7.6 million dead cap hit. So, I mean, they always play with these numbers, dead cap and cap. But the point is, the players have to make a decision. I mean, Bosa signed a 5-year, $135 million deal. He's never going to see that money ever again.
No, this is his last big contract.
Right.
Agreed.
That was his last contract, big contract. He sounded like Elliott signed that
second
big
contract's always more important than the first one.
Because it's going to be the big one, because at the end of the deal, that's going to be the contract. Because after that contract, you're pretty much going to A, be retired, or B, you're going to be a 1-year deal.
Yeah,
1-year deal.
from team to team.
Exactly. And that's what happens. That's Irish Mike. Appreciate you coming. You're doing the show with me.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it, Pat.
Great.
Have a great weekend. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the 2 hours of your time today, buddy. Stay safe. Everybody, thanks for listening. Do not drink, do not drive. Get a designated driver and buckle up and stay safe. Saturday morning sports page, Pat Lucia on Western Reserve Radio.
You're listening to Western Reserve Radio, WRDB, The Scourge, a part of the Sports Map Radio Network.
Keyboard Cat, Hamilton the Pug, and Toast Meets World. These are some of the internet's most beloved pets. And they all have one thing in common. Their stories started in a shelter. Start your story. Adopt a dog or cat today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you. Training that pet to play the keyboard, that's optional. Start a story. Adopt a shelter or rescue pet today. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Okay, what are you wearing right now?
Nothing.
That's right. So mommy's going to teach you how to dress yourself. Underwear always comes first, name tag at the back, then pants, then shirt. Get the first button in the right hole or you have to start all over. Socks going first, then shoes, right on right, left on left. With shoelaces, just take the ends, cross them over, switch the loops, the rabbit goes down the hole, pull tight, and you're left with bunny ears. Got it? Why are your pants on your head?
Most parenting is hard to do in just 2 minutes. 2 minutes twice a day, making sure they brush their teeth, is easier, and it could help save them from a lifetime of tooth pain. Visit 2min2x.org to find out more. A message from the Partnership for Healthy Mouths, Healthy Lives, and the Ad Council.
How's it going? I'm having a stroke. Are you going to shake my hand? I'm having a stroke. Wow, you're not even moving your arm. I'm having a stroke.
When someone is having a stroke, they may not be able to say it with words, but their body language will tell you loud and clear. Look for FAST. F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911 immediately. Know the sudden signs. Spot a stroke fast. Visit strokeassociation.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke Association and the Ad Council.
The storks are bringing me a baby brother. We can do this together.
All right, let's go.
Storks know how to keep kids safe. Do you?
What?
Oh my gosh, you don't know.
I know.
You don't. Oh man, you laugh when you're uncomfortable.
No.
Making sure your child is in the right car seat is one of the steps to safer travel.
I will rock this.
You will rock this.
To know for sure that your child is in the right car seat for their age and size, visit safercar.gov/the-right-seat. Cool. Very cool. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
The Mahoning Valley's leader for golf, Milk Creek Golf Course, is now booking tee times for 2024. We offer stay and play opportunities available with 9 area hotel partners. For more information, visit our website at millcreekmetroparks.org. Also, look for new, exciting opportunities coming soon, including an indoor player development center with Trackman, an indoor Callaway Club fitting center, and an Odyssey fitting studio in 2024. Follow us on Facebook at Milk Creek Golf Course or call 330-740-7112.
WWE superstar Alberto Del Rio. Take one.
Behold the angry giant.
Try it again, Alberto.
Behold the angry giant.
Perfect. Good luck tonight.
Behold the angry giant.
Yay! Read me another one, Dad.
This is WWE superstar Alberto Del Rio. It only takes a moment to make a moment. Take time to be a dad today.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
I spend a lot of time in the backyard, and I'm the center of attention at summer barbecues. In '96, I made some of the tastiest s'mores. And in '09, it was me, your backyard fire pit, that accidentally started a wildfire when a summer breeze carried one of my embers into some dry brush.
Spark a change, not a wildfire. Visit SmokeyBear.com. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Hope you enjoyed your meal. And I just want to say, he's lucky to have a brother like you.
Lucky? Caring for my brother is far from easy. But he's a part of me, like my arms and legs, so I'll be his.